I've also found that there's a huge number of people that are adults and that are writers that don't have the basics when it comes to grammar. And I'm not saying can they identify a noun and a verb, like that's traditional basics. What I mean is, what are some sentence constructions or sentence types that can make our writing more fluid when we're used to simple, compound, complex, and even compound complex sentences, and have them in our back pocket. So when we're doing, for me, the hardest part of getting words down on the page, at least I have some sentence frames to put those words into. And that way, it just becomes slightly less torturous to draft, but it also really helps us look at, when we are revising, we can look for the musicality in our writing. We can listen for the rhythm in our writing. And is that reflecting our meaning? Is that reflecting what we're trying to communicate to our reader?
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 476 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Patty McGee, a nationally recognized literary consultant, speaker, and educator who's passionate about transforming classrooms into spaces where language and learning come alive. With decades of experience as a teacher, coach, and advocate for delightful literary practices, Patty has worked alongside educators across the country, partnering to unlock the full potential of their students through innovative and practical teaching strategies. Not Your Granny's Grammar is her third book, and we talk about that book, about how grammar shouldn't be scary or a gatekeeper for people, and so much more. And that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by my affiliate link to Manuscript Report. Manuscript Report is an analytical AI tool that gives you access to your own stuff, but in a unique way. What you do is you load your manuscript to Manuscript Report, and within about 20 minutes or so, you'll get back a detailed analytical look at your manuscript, from something as simple as the synopsis of the book to sales copy, sales blurbs, basic look at the audience, who the audience members might be, some of the demographics for them, a list of comp authors and titles, how your book is similar to those books, and how your book is unique from those books. It gives you some sales pitches, some log lines, lists of keywords, ideal categories, gives you a breakdown of the various genres that your book goes into, as well as tropes. All great content that you can use for marketing your book. Now, this is really effective use of AI that's not writing for you, but it's helping you with your marketing copy. And I've run several of my books over the last year or so through Manuscript Report, and I've gotten some gems. Now, like any tool, you get some really good content and you massage it yourself. So think of it like a first draft for that really good sales copy. It even provides you a press release that you can send out about your book, which again, I've used for a first draft. I've made some modifications to it, added some things, taken some things away. Like anything, it's a first draft. But it saves me hours and hours of work. And it can save you hours of work too, because you can get 10% off Manuscript Report by going over to the manuscriptreport.com, the URL manuscriptreport.com, and using the code MARK10, that's Mark 10 at checkout. to get your 10% off. Okay, comments from recent episodes over on YouTube for episode 475, Writing Emotions and Making the Reader Feel with Jeff Elkins. Tim Gallo says, I listen to the podcast and I don't really review the show notes. Okay, so Tim is referring to my plea to ask listeners, like, how much work should I put into the show notes? Because they take a lot of time. And Tim was responding to that. So thanks for that, Tim. So Tim says, I listen, but I don't review the show notes. For me, I'm an auditory learner first, so listening helps me stash away the content of a podcast. Occasionally, I'll find a video or podcast with a presenter who gives good content, but is difficult to listen to. When that happens, I just ask AI to summarize the video for me. But given a choice, I like to hear people speak. Thank you so much for that, Tim, and I appreciate that. And I suppose I should feel honored because I'm not difficult to listen to. So there you go. Now, ask one of my kids and you can say, yeah, maybe I'm difficult to listen to. You know that voice droning on in the background that sounds like the parents from, or the teachers from Charlie Brown? Yeah, that's me. That's your dad. Anyways, so thanks for that, Tim. I appreciate that. And interestingly, I've taken advantage of that AI summarization. It's a tip I learned from Joanna Penn. When I don't have time to listen to a full hour, let's say because I need to get some information right away, or I need to absorb it because I need to respond to it, or whatever, I've been able to do that. And I've used Notebook LM for that, where it can just give me some bullet points from the discussion. For example, if I'm doing research on someone before I interview them and I really need to get some information really quickly because last minute character that I am a procrastinator. Sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I got this interview in half an hour. So I got to, 15 minutes to compile everything and then make some notes, etc. But anyways, thank you for that, Tim. It helps me. And I guess I learn different things in different ways. I do prefer audio and potentially video in some manners, but I do still read a lot, although I don't know, it's a tough one. So thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. It's given me something to chew on. And so anyone who has thoughts on, do you actually pay attention to the show notes at starkreflections.ca or not, let me know. Because right now, 100% of the people who respond to that, it's telling me I don't really have to worry about the show notes that much. Or should I? Hey, maybe I could take the thing after it's posted and run it through Notebook and get the show notes from there. Yeah, that could be a way I could do it there. Maybe leverage AI to take care of some of those tasks I don't want to do, like the repetitive things. I love the creativity, I love the writing, I love the interviewing, I love the reflecting. Food for thought. What sayest thou? Leave me a comment just like Tim did. And again, I think Tim left this comment over on the YouTube. Yeah, so thank you for that. It's easier to find them on starkreflections.ca or YouTube. So I'm trying to go there every week to get back caught up on comments. Speaking of getting caught up, a bit of a late shout out to Corinne, who left a comment on YouTube a couple of weeks back, I guess when I was on the road at Halifax for episode 473. And Corinne said, looking forward to seeing you at TriCon, and that's TriCon Halifax. Crane's referring to, not looking forward to the 8 a.m. time for the panel, LOL. It's like, oh my God, I hear you, Corinne. And again, I'm in Atlantic time, which is an hour earlier for me, but I mean, not a problem, because I was still up stupid o'clock early, despite staying up late and enjoying some great, Halifax brew pubs and stuff like that. No, I think I was actually in bed by midnight that night, and I still got up dumb early, had a few coffees, did a little bit of work, and then went to that 8 a.m. panel. But anyways, thank you for that. I hope you enjoyed TriCon as much as I enjoyed TriCon, because I am definitely going back. All right, so toggling over to Patreon for comments. So I've been posting a backlog of articles that are on Substack but are now locked for paid subscribers, because on Substack, for the first 4 weeks of when I post something, it's free to anyone to read, subscriber or not. But then after 4 weeks, you have paid content. But what I'm doing is a bonus for my patrons. I'm going to post that content, and I'm getting caught up on the backlog of those. And so for an article I've shared 2 in the last couple of weeks. I'm going to try and get 1 a week out so I can get all caught up with that. But for an article I shared earlier this week called "With This Pen, I Thee Connect," which is basically, I had an earlier episode of the podcast about this. It was based on a keynote that I did about the value of what we do as writers with, the connection between humans, which is we need this so desperately in today's society. But anyways, 15 asides aside, I received this comment from Tom. Tom said, you passed over man's first method of storytelling. So again, I should explain for anyone that hasn't read the article or listened to that, is I get into, storytelling and art and creativity and acting and et cetera. But Tim says, you passed over man's first method of storytelling well before painting on the cave walls, before oratory presentations. Our predecessors, like other creatures, you touched upon bees, communicated via dance. Oh my God, how could I have missed that? Okay, back to Tom's comment. Dance is recognized as an art form as old as humanity itself, if not before. Dance is ingrained in humans. It's genetic. Don't take my word for it. One of your fellow Canadians wrote 2 decades ago. And Tom linked to a fantastic article, Humans Waltzed Once, Survival Dance, Humans Waltzed during the Ice Age. Great article on livescience.com. I'll have a link to that in the show notes at starkreflections.ca for anyone who goes and looks at the show notes. Okay, Tom continues to say, I bring this submission to your attention on behalf of my spouse, a choreographer now reborn as an author and artist, S.K. Randolph, who has commented previously. Thanks, S.K. Or potentially it was Tom as well. And Tom continues to say, perhaps you've seen her work. In 1988, she was the ballet mistress for the Alberta Ballet. How awesome is that? Signed, regards, Tom, spouse, and marketing manager for SK. Smiley face. Thank you for that, Tom. I'm sure SK knows you're working hard. But again, it's just a reminder of all of the different ways we communicate and we share our passion and storytelling, right? Because dance is a beautiful art form. My partner, in fact, Liz, ballet was one of her first passions or first loves when she was young, and that's something she still loves choreography and still does a lot of that in the videos and stuff that she produces today. But yeah, definitely, I think it's the choreography that she really enjoyed in the dance, and I want watching her and even helping her a little bit where I can help without messing things up, as she's completely redone the landscaping in the front yard, and it is like a dance to see the flow of the pathways she's created and the way she's planted the flowers and the vegetables and stuff like that. Just absolutely exquisite. So I would argue I also missed something like landscaping and gardening is a beautiful art form as well. But again, I digress 59 more times. But also on Patreon, Lois Bartholomew said, thanks, Mark, for being there for us. And this was under my article called The Passion Economy of Paying It Forward. I'm positive I was inspired by Becca Syme to write that article. I'm pretty sure I was. Thank you so much, Lois. Great to hear from you. And then over on Substack, I'm going to move over to the Substack since I'm getting a lot of comments there. MPAC said on my article, taking the path that gets you the better story, the deliberate lines you draw on the page of your writing life. Now, this is an article I wrote reflecting on something I overheard at TriCon, and I just, was chewing on it and had extra content, so I put that out there. Anyways, MPAC said, I've been on a creative exploration path recently and have come to similar conclusions about choices. As we evolve, what lines we add to the dragon become more elaborate and more deliberate. I believe in continuously evolving. Thank you for that comment. I really appreciate that. And it's a reminder, of course, that this Taking the Path That Gets You the Better story is based on something that author Deanna Foster said, that her partner has said, who he is an artist himself. And as I was thinking about that, Taking the Path That Gets You the Better story, I was thinking about James Artemis Owen, a dear friend of mine. I call him my big brother, who I know initially through Superstars writing seminars, and his brilliant Drawing Out the Dragons talk and book and audiobook, etc. I highly encourage you to check it out. But he was talking about the deliberate lines in, drawing the dragon, in terms of it starts with one deliberate line, then another deliberate line, etc. So anyway, so thank you, MPAX, for that comment. I really appreciate that. For that post as well, Don King commented saying, there's always a choice. Not choosing, just letting things happen, is a choice. Plus, there are really no wrong choices, just choices with different outcomes, different dragons, you might say. Oh, Don, you are so correct. Thank you for that. And you reminded me of one of my favorite Rush lyrics, which is from the song Free Will, which says, I'll go a little bit longer with this one, just so you can hear me sing in Geddy Lee's voice. No, don't worry, I won't sing. But the song goes, you can choose a ready guide in some celestial voice. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. You can choose a path that's clear. Oh, God. You can choose. God, this is embarrassing. Let me go back to this, just so I can make you suffer through more Rush. You can choose a ready guide in some celestial voice. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. You can choose from phantom fears and kindness that can kill. I will choose a path that's clear. I will choose free will. And then cue the guitar riff from Alex. Okay, so thanks, Don, for giving me excuse to quote Rush. Appreciate it. And also, of course, thanks for your awesome comment. On that episode, on that article, I should say, Stanley B. Trice said, I have been trying to remember names. It helps me be in the moment. And taking the road trip rather than flying sounds a lot more fun. Yeah, it is a lot more fun. It's a bigger investment, but, to me, it's really important to invest in the people in my life, the people around me, the people I love, and spend more time with them, because I know we're not going to have them around longer. Just a couple days ago, our neighbor had a heart attack. His heart actually stopped. They had to revive him several times on the way into the hospital. He's recovering, expecting to have a full recovery, but it was really terrifying that we weren't going to get to see Chris again. And, just paying attention to the moment, to the people, taking the road less traveled, taking the path that gets you the better story, remembering someone's name. And Liz and I are doing better. Like, she's really, really, really good at names. But she's really good with kids' names and parents' names and stuff like that related to work. And I've been relatively good about getting to know the names of the people in our neighborhood, in your neighborhood. But anyways, thank you for that, Stanley. And last comment on that episode for now was Regina Clark said, and okay, so in Canada, we pronounce that name Regina, just like the capital city in Saskatchewan, not Regina. And I think I've made that mistake before. So Regina, I hope I got that one correct. Please let me know if I got it wrong, because I want to Canadianize your name. But I want to Canadianize everyone, apparently. Regina said, chock full of great stories and welcomed advice. And also said, call back to something I just did. Never heard of Rush till you mentioned it often enough. I had to check it out. Came across the powerful lyrics to the Manhattan Project. Regina, thanks so much. I'm glad I made you suffer through Rush enough that you actually checked out the lyrics. And again, I do love the musical talent of the boys from Rush, or I guess now, with the new tour they're doing, the gang, the people, because it's going to be, now that Neil has passed, and they're going on tour with Annika Neelas. The new drummer, female, I can't say the boys, I say the gang, the troupe, the folks from work. Anyways, I'm so glad you checked it out. But like I said, I love their music so much. But it was the lyrics, it was Neil Peart's lyrics that first made me fall in love with Rush. Because they were very philosophical. They make me think about stuff, and you are so correct. The Manhattan Project is such an amazing, amazing tale. Imagine a time where it all began. Anyways, I will not get into more Rush lyrics. I've already made you guys listen to me do more. But thank you guys so much for the comments. Let me just roll a bumper and I'll get into a personal update. Okay, so a personal update. I'm going to try to keep this brief because I went really long with comments and stuff like that earlier on. But I did recently, I've been doing, I think it's going to be 4 in-person events where I'm selling books at. I'm going to be doing the Waterloo Book Fest, which is this coming weekend. It's going to be Saturday. May 30th, which will be the day after this episode comes out, in Uptown Waterloo, the square there. It is, I'm hoping the weather is like has been the last few days here, nice and beautiful and sunny and warm. And it's going to be free, and it's from 2 p.m. till 8 p.m. and it's always great. It's actually free through, it's organized through the City of Waterloo and Create Waterloo and the KW Writers Alliance, and there's no cost to it. And so it's just a great opportunity for the creative arts in Waterloo. And the last weekend I did, but I did have to pay for it. I did the, because most events you do have to pay for a table. It was the Burlington Book Expo. It was the first one of those. And I think the table was $60. And I brought back about $95 in sales, which means technically the money I brought in compared to the table, I was above board, I wasn't in the red. But if I actually look at the cost of books and stuff like that, I probably maybe broke even or didn't quite break even, or maybe I was a little bit under. But I did sell some books, but more importantly, and this is a weird aspect, more importantly, I gained several things. And so I want to reflect on the fact that even though I didn't make my money back, although I did make more money than I'd spent, but you know how it is, the gas and all that stuff too. A few good things happened. I connected with a few people. I connected with, among the people, on top of readers, I did connect with some readers, and there's some really awesome folks who were there who were readers and so excited about the Canadian Werewolf series or my haunted books, and some of them were interested in my my movie trivia books. And so great conversations with folks. Did not sell a lot of books, but I had some great engagement. And honestly, even if I did an event like that, and I know that people came and they just went and got my books out from the library, or they went and bought them online or whatever, that's fine. It's not necessarily about the selling, it's about the connections. But I found another audiobook narrator to work with. I got some projects that I needed a different female voice for, because I've been working with a few different female narrators, and one of them wasn't able to do a few of my stories, so I was like, okay, great, I got someone else now. I also found another local printer from that I might be able to use for some of my books with one of my neighbors. I found several local people, including someone who, Melissa, who does this local thing called the Book Crawl. And it's like, and the card is amazing because it's got a pint of beer, it's beer and books, and I'm like, okay, I'm in, we got to meet for a beer and talk about this. And I connected with a few other writers I'd never met before, which was great. It's always wonderful, as well as several writers that I have met before, and even found there was a gentleman. He had his first book out, epic fantasy book, and he had one of those 3D hologram sign things, and he had like dragons and sword and sorcery kind of stuff, and it was a brightly lit room, and it was a 52-inch display, and he was across the hall from me, and I could clearly see it even in the bright lights. And that was one of the things I was holding off for, because I hadn't seen one of those 3D video image displays. And then I went over and talked to him as we were all packing up, and he showed me what it was. He showed, how he bought it. So I ordered one. It came in the other day. I've played with it. I've done a 2-minute looping video for my Canadian Werewolf series, including the Wolf Howl. It was a video I acquired. I guess it was from Adobe, with my subscription to Adobe, like an Adobe video of a Wolf Howl. It's an animated one. And then I have my book covers, and I'm going to be doing some spooky. Again, I've gotten some video from Adobe with my subscription there, of some ghosts, and I'm probably going to do like, a ghost, and then a book cover from one of my ghost story books, because I've got half a dozen of them. And I'll probably rotate through, and I'll use that. Now, I'm not going to be able to use that at a lot of venues. It's going to have to be a venue where I have electricity, which you have to pay more for, but I think it could be useful. I know Liz and I can even use it for Halloween, some skeletons and ghosts and stuff like that. So, but it still works quite nicely. I will potentially, if people are interested, share more about how I can use it. The software is a little bit janky initially, but I was able to struggle my way through and get it up and running relatively quickly. Assembling it was relatively easy, and it wasn't that expensive. I think it was like $150. The stand, I think, cost me a little bit more. than the device itself. But it's a good sturdy stand because you don't want things flopping and falling over. Oh, and by the way, it spins really. It's a LED light-based thing. It does like 3D holographic images in the air. And I was accidentally trying to adjust the tilt of the thing while it was on, and it tagged me in the arm. Ow! Imagine that a fan spinning really, really fast. Imagine that might actually hurt. It does. It does hurt. I don't have to imagine it anymore. So that's one thing to be cautious about. Okay, but that's it for my personal update. It is now time on the Stark Reflections podcast for us to get into the main content, my interview with Patty McGee. And that's coming up right after this bumper. Hey, Patty, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to chat with you. So this is a topic that it sounds like homework, and it sounds like scary, and it sounds like rules and all the things. But this, as your book says, is not your granny's grammar. Can you explain a little bit about why you decided to take that approach?
Oh, sure. I could explain this for quite a long time. So
Good, cool, awesome. Yes, let's do it. Let's do it because I want to understand. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I was a fourth grade teacher. I started in the mid-90s, and I really worked hard on making my literacy block as rich with learning as possible, really. And then we got to grammar, and it was the same old thing. I think it was literally because it was a school that I went to, that I was also working in, that I think it was still literally the same product that when I was in fourth grade, I was using. And now as a teacher, I was using it with my students. And it sucked the life out of literacy at that moment. It was like a black hole in my teaching. And that problem of practice for me just kind of stuck with me. And it's been over 30 years now. And bit by bit, I was trying to figure out, like, what is it that I could do that could make grammar learning, number one, more effective. If the methods that our grandparents were taught with were working, even if it was kind of miserable, I'd find a way to stick with it.
Right.
But it wasn't just miserable. It also was ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have ideas of, like, what is it that we could do so that we learn grammar like grammar is an art. And it really hasn't ever been presented that way, except for one product that I really love. It's not a product, it's really just brilliance on pages. It's Patterns of Power. So I was greatly inspired by their study of, say, sentences.
Yeah.
And I also thought to myself, well, what are things that we do when we learn naturally?
Right.
Let's just say out in the world. I wanted to learn how to refinish furniture with these very specific chalk paints and waxes. And I first just got really curious about it. And then I hypothesized what color combination and wax combination might look good. And then I would go to a store where there was an expert who knew who knew how to do all of this. And they gave me feedback, and they taught me explicitly the things that I could do. They gave me a chance to experiment and play, and I did more experimenting and playing on my own. And then I would actually paint the piece and reflect on it and think, what is it that I can remember to do next time? And what might I want to try? Or what am I curious about still? And when I realized that those were ingredients that we as humans naturally put ourselves or give ourselves in a learning situation, that's when I thought, oh my goodness, what if there were the same entry points for grammar learning? And that's where sometime in the past, like 6 years, somebody asked me to explain, well, if you don't teach grammar in the way that you use workbooks and such, how would you describe your methods? And I said, well, it's different. It's not the same as, and then I just said, it's not your granny's grammar. And that's how I started using that. Like it was a title long before it was a book.
Yeah.
Um, and and basically that's the history of how we got there. But I've also found that there's a huge number of people that are adults and that are writers that don't have the basics when it comes to grammar. And I'm not saying can they identify a noun and a verb, like that's traditional basics. What I
Right.
mean is, what are some sentence constructions or sentence types that can make our writing more fluid when we're used to simple, compound, complex, and even compound complex sentences, and have them in our back pocket. So when we're doing, for me, the hardest part of getting words down on the page, at least I have some sentence frames to put those words into.
Right.
And that way, it just becomes slightly less torturous to
Okay.
draft.
All right.
But it also really helps us look at, when we are revising, we can look for the musicality in our writing. We can listen for the rhythm in our writing. And is that reflecting our meaning? Is that reflecting what we're trying to communicate to
Okay.
our reader?
So I want to dig into, I guess, the frightening aspect, or that aspect that you didn't like about
Yes.
grammar, because I've been writing since I was 14
Mhm.
for submission to markets and places like that. But if you put me on the spot and asked me to identify what different words were, is this
Yeah.
an adjective, adverb, is this a whatever preposition, all those things, I get bogged down and get scared and go, I don't know, I just know it sounds good.
Yep.
So is that approach, like in this book or in the instruction that you do
Mhm.
to help instructors, is that something that somebody like me can embrace because I don't have to memorize memorize? It's kind of like
Yeah.
the times tables for math, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I have found that identifying parts of speech or identification in grammar has been kind of a gatekeeper of actually learning how to use grammar in a
Okay.
way we want it to sound, or how to misuse grammar
Right.
in a way we want it to sound.
Yeah.
So, yes. And I've talked to many groups of adult writers who find that when it's time to go to copy edit, they're just fearful because of the way that grammar has been, taught
Yeah.
and explained in the past. And we know that our goal as writers is clarity and connection. And when there are some things aren't, that are standing in the way of clarity and connection, that's what I think our copy editors are for.
Right.
Not to remove our voice, not
Gotcha.
to take away or scold us into remembering what grammar terms we were taught at one point.
Right. So, you've got over 30 years of experience teaching,
Yeah.
and is it mostly teaching youngsters, or do you also did you migrate into teaching adults as well?
Yes. So my current job is, I am a literacy consultant, but I think that sounds too formal.
Yeah.
I call myself a traveling teacher.
Oh, that's more
Um,
fun. Yeah.
yes. And I overheard a second grader describe me to her grandpa once when I was leaving a school. She said, that lady's not a stranger. She's a traveling teacher, which means she comes to schools to make teachers' jobs just a little bit easier.
Okay.
And sometimes she teaches us.
Oh, I
And
love that.
so,
Okay.
yeah. So, in the way that I work with, or have worked and will continue to work with both grown-ups and kids, is that I teach kids so that grown-ups can watch. And
Oh, okay.
so, kind of like doctors.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
They
so,
become the residents that are working with the
yeah,
senior. Okay.
yes,
All right.
exactly. And so I found that with the grammar work, I've now realized that when I'm working with grown-ups, most of us, first of all, have a lot of baggage.
Okay.
Second, don't feel comfortable with their grammar. So I'm using the same methods
Right.
that I'm using with students. And it's really helping everyone feel, number one, uh, maybe it's more like a mind shift. It's a that we're looking at grammar as style, grammar as communication,
Right.
and rather than a punitive type of mentality. And I think that once that shifts in adults' minds, that makes a difference for the way kids learn.
Oh, I love that. So I want to dig into the book with
Sure.
not your granny's grammar, which is meant for educators. So it is available through I guess the trade slash academic
Mm-hmm.
market for educators to purchase. But for a
Mm-hmm.
writer who's thinking, well, I really like myself. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know how to write, but I want to get better and I want to learn more about that. Is this a type of text that a writer might be able to approach? Because, okay, I'm going to teach myself instead of
Yeah.
teaching someone else.
Yes. So I co-authored this book with Tim Donahue, who is a grammar guru, for lack of a better word. I used to
Good
call him,
alliteration, by the
yes, thank you.
way.
I used to call him Grammar Yoda until I realized
Oh.
Yoda does not speak
No,
grammatically
no.
correctly, so
Yeah, because
it
that's a
didn't
mixed
really work.
signal right there.
Yes. So he wrote a quarter of the book that is a grammar refresher.
Okay.
And he also recorded himself teaching. He got a dry erase board for his basement. He
Okay.
has three boys, like fourth grade to eighth grade, and they videotaped their dad teaching different grammatical concepts.
Okay.
So I think that is worth its weight in gold for
Right.
any writer to get some refreshers there. But
Wow.
there's also in the first chapter, it's helping us reset the way we think about grammar. It's redefining what grammar really is. It's not a static set of rules that we're punished into using.
Right.
And I think that that chapter is very helpful as well. I know a lot of grown-ups wouldn't necessarily like this part, but I'm going to tell you it's the most effective part.
Okay.
Is I like to use grammar manipulatives. So if you're not in the education world, those are basically hands-on objects that you can move around. They're mostly used in math to, like,
Right. Yeah.
solidify grammatical or mathematical concepts.
Right.
I created uh, the same sort of thing, manipulatives for grammar.
Oh,
And
okay.
for the grown-ups, if they go into that chapter, it's also a companion site, so you can print anything out and
Right.
allow themselves to play with
Mm.
those manipulatives, where they're not having to start from, like, okay, now that I just learned that from the refresher, let me compose immediately on the page, but rather let's play with this and see what I can do. And with that play, it takes away the extra burden of creation, let's say, of like getting the exact precise word down, or
Mhm.
you'll get there. But the play part makes it so we're practicing these concepts without it feeling like a worksheet or some
Right.
type of fill in the blank or anything like that. It is instead it gives us the chance, as I've heard someone in Texas say, a chance to muck around
Muck around,
with
yes.
our with grammar a little bit. And I think that would be the most effective part for anyone using this.
I like that because it's that hands-on aspect, which I think a lot of people learn by trying and doing. Or there is no try, no do or do not do. There is no tries, but but actually playing around with it really gives
Yeah.
you that sense of it. But I actually panicked for a second because when you said manipulatives, I was thinking you're going to manipulate people.
Oh gosh,
I
no.
didn't know it was physical manipulation or the
Yes.
equivalent of
Yeah.
physical manipulation. So that's cool. So I
Yeah.
want to dig more into the concept of grammar fluency and fluidity. Yeah, because
Mhm.
you've mentioned that before. Because it doesn't feel like, but grammar's structured and rigid, and you got to do this and you can't do that. Like, right? Like, how do you get to that fluidity and how does it become less terrifying
Yes.
for those rule breakers like me?
Right. Exactly. So first, I'm going to kind of like back into that question.
Yeah, of course.
First, I think of grammar in three buckets
Okay.
that are like one bucket is spoken grammar. It's the grammar that's used in communities, in households, in certain areas of the world, and it's unique. And it starts to often um, influence other types of grammar, which is really
Okay.
cool. And then there's book grammar. And book grammar is the use or intentional misuse of standard grammar.
Okay.
And standard grammar, if you're a teacher or a student, it's the standards that have been specified for grammar. If you're an author, it's the style guide that you're following.
Okay.
And so the only time I feel like we need to be really rigid in one of the style guides is when we are writing something for a particular audience. So if I'm writing a dissertation, I'm going to use APA
Right.
style,
Of course.
uh,
Yeah.
right? But if I'm writing for an audience and it's something that I'm communicating, but I know that audience is looking for a little bit of humor, I know that I'm going to be using some of the grammar in bucket number one of conversational grammar, maybe a little bit of the standard grammar, because if we get too far away, we lose meaning. And that's where it's artful. That's where um, having these three buckets that we think about as we're writing can really help us with that type of fluency and fluidity.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I guess when I'm thinking about writers today,
Mhm.
what would be some of the most common things that writers should attend more to that you're noticing
Mhm.
in the written word? I know in spoken word it's extremely fluid
Mhm.
in terms
Yes.
of the way we put things together because it's about intent and meaning and context, I imagine. But what are some of the sort of the grammar gaffes potentially
Mm.
that are regularly have been introduced into modern writing that you like to address?
Yeah. Well, I don't at this point think of grammar gaffes. Grammar's ever evolving. It doesn't, it's not the same as 100 years ago.
Right.
It's interesting because in the book, I also just captured language from the 17th century all the way through today. And you can just see the evolution of the grammar and how much more we understand today's grammar versus in the 17th century. And so I believe that many of the gaffes are going to become, if not rules, then just not a gaffe any longer.
Right.
So, for example, the comma splice. So basically, if you're combining two simple sentences where these sentences can stand on their own
Yeah.
and you combine them with a comma, that would be considered a comma splice. And that is a rule that says you can't do that. You can do that with a semicolon, you can do it with a colon, you can do it with a conjunction. I think that rule is going to go away. I
Right.
think that adults use comma splices all the time. I see them everywhere.
Right.
And very successful, famous authors like Cormac McCarthy, like he's good at that.
Oh, yes.
Um,
For
and
miles
so,
and miles. Yes.
yes. And so I believe that most gaffes, if they're something that stands out to me as a pattern, is just a sign that it's going to become something acceptable down
Right.
the road.
Okay. I get, yeah, I see that. Yeah, I remember in early days, reading Writer's Digest magazine and articles and stuff like that. And I think there's certain conjunctions you just could never use because the opposite word and use the opposite meaning of that word is because you can't, I can't remember what they are, but I just remember like that being drilled into my head. And
Mhm.
now I see that conjunction used all the time.
Yes.
20, 30 years later, of course, where it's like,
Yes.
oh, but it was almost like with the typewriter. I grew up on a typewriter, so
Me
it took
too.
a long time to untrain the two spaces after a period.
Oh, I've given up on that. I
Find
just
and
let,
replace, right?
yes, exactly.
So, so you work as a traveling teacher or literary consultant, depending on
Mhm.
the perspective. One of them sounds
Yes.
scary, the other one sounds fun. Hey,
Yes.
like Mary
Yes.
Poppins showed up. You're gonna have some good times, right?
Yeah.
Um, you do work with people, you do writing instruction and grammar
Mhm.
instruction. Is that something someone can hire you directly, or is it usually
Yeah.
groups or enterprises that hire you to teach?
It's any of the above. It is uh, any group that would like to refine how they express themselves on the page
Right,
is a group for me.
right.
And I've been contacted by a number of different people. Like there was somebody who contacted me who was from the UK, and she lives in America now and works for a museum and writes grants. And the UK kind of grammar isn't really grant ready. And
Right.
so people like that, I have small classes that I run virtually, and I work sometimes for my friends because they're writing something and they want some extra, not grammar support necessarily, because I think the word alone has such negative connotations that go with it, such
Right.
shame around it. Like, I really want us to do away with the t-shirts that say, I'm silently correcting your grammar, or the mugs that say grammar police. Like,
Yes.
we're just surrounded by it. And
Yeah.
if we could not have an us and them kind of, uh, I find it a little insidious, to be honest with you, because in the greater scheme of things, people are judged for their grammar, the
Yeah,
way they
of
speak,
course. Yeah. And
the
the way
way
they
that,
write.
yes, exactly. And the only methodology most of us know is just the identification, hasn't taught usage.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, yes, I work with lots of different people, young and old, to just think about, here are some basics. And basics aren't parts of speech, actually.
Right.
Basics
Yeah.
are sentences.
So I have to admit, I am guilty of quietly smirking or actually feeling my blood pressure go up
Mm.
when I see the proliferation of there,
Mm-hmm.
and misplaced apostrophes. And
Mm-hmm.
again, maybe because it was drilled into my head, I get so infuriated and frustrated. I usually don't open my mouth. I just kind of shake my head and go, "What's the world coming to?" But
Yes.
with the fluidity of
Yeah.
grammar, do you think because 90% of the population doesn't know there, and
Mm-hmm.
your, possessive and belonging to and or
Mm-hmm.
that group, um, is that something we're probably going to see an evolution in, and that maybe in another 5 to 10 to 15 years that we blend that into, since nobody's using it correctly anyways, let's get rid of that
Mm.
rule or those rules? Is that something that's going to
Yeah.
happen so my blood pressure can stop?
Well, I think that's more of a linguistic
Okay.
topic more than it is a grammar topic.
Oh,
But
so in actual writing that's submitted for
mhm,
publication,
mhm,
that's a no-no. But in on
mhm.
Facebook, oh, who cares?
No.
Okay, so you're silently judging too.
I
Okay.
know. Oh, yeah. I mean, I
Okay.
just don't want to be vocal about it, but I did.
Yeah.
One time, I said to my husband, because he was commenting on things that I was posting on Facebook that were usually things about the work that I do, and he's misusing your and your.
Oh my God.
And
And
I
he's like, I'm
said,
a professional here, honey.
yeah, I was like, listen, if you don't get the your and your right, I am going to unfriend you and block you because this cannot be something that people are like, oh, she writes books, but her husband can't even spell the your and your correctly.
Oh my goodness. It's so funny because my partner is in education as a principal, a K to 6 school.
Nice.
And she's had the experience of having to step into a classroom. In Ontario, the principals don't teach. They used to when I was
Yeah.
younger, but not anymore. It's like a separate union and all that stuff. But
Okay.
because of a teacher who was off ill, I had to step in and take care of the grade 6 class, and was shocked because it was only 10 years ago she was teaching grade 6.
Yeah.
And she was shocked that they were reading and writing at a grade 1 level. Is that consistent in what you're seeing when you're working with educators? Is like, because I keep going, I know my kid who's 21 years old never learned cursive, so it's kind of cute when I write a Christmas card to him still. He's like, Dad, what does this say? I'm like, oh my God, I forgot. You can't read cursive. When you were young, I used to print it, but now that you're an
Yeah.
adult, well, I just write it. But that kind of stuff is it almost feels like did that go away from education?
I have a theory
Yeah, I'd love
on
to hear
it.
it.
My theory is that we've overtech kids, that they are
Oh,
on devices. And when they're off their computer or iPad, they're looking at a screen like a
right.
smart board or something like that, that we have not given enough time for paper books, for paper writing, that handwriting is one of the most useful ways of remembering and building skills. And I'm not talking about the shapes of letters, it's the actual physical action that fires more neurons than typing does.
Oh,
And I think what we've done is we've taken away what can actually help us learn unknowingly, thinking
right.
tech was the answer.
Oh my
And I
God.
don't think that it is. I think
So
it's done the opposite.
I've been taking notes while we've been talking, by the way, not typing them, but writing them down.
Yes. There you go.
In
So
my
you're firing more neurons than if you were
Yeah,
typing.
in my half cursive, half block letter,
Yes.
the adaptation over the years.
Yes.
All right, so as we near the close of the conversation, and this has just been eye-opening and fascinating, thank you. What are some things that you'd love to remind writers of who, when they're approaching this topic and they want to become better at it? What are some of the things you want to remind them
Mm.
are important, I guess, to remember or are important to consider?
Yes. I think that when the discomfort and fear of grammar creeps in to our minds, that we need some type of response to reframe that thinking. Grammar isn't rules, grammar is art. Grammar isn't rules, grammar is style. It is your fingerprint on the page. And we can think like Picasso, where we learn some of the things that make us a fine artist, and then we go Picasso, just like he did.
I love that so much. Thank you. You've liberated my fear of grammar in just
Yay.
half an hour. Patty, can you please let my listeners know where they can find you online, where they can find this latest book, as well as you have three other books, I believe,
I have two other
grammar,
books.
or
Yes.
two other books for on grammar for teaching, I guess.
Yes, the best place to find me is on pattymcgee.org, but just be sure to spell Patty with a Y, because Patty with an I actually have a picture book on her. She's a famous skateboarder from the
Oh,
60s.
from the 60s. There you go.
And
So
so
you're not
that's
a
who you'll
skateboarding
find.
grammar guru.
Nope,
Okay.
I do not have the balance
Okay.
for it. So it's pattymcgee.org. And then my book can be found on my publisher's website, which is corwin.com. You can use the code SAVE20, and that'll give you free shipping and 20% off. But it's also found in lots of other places that we find books.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Patty, thanks for hanging out with me today. I knew that you would be an amazing guest, and I was going to try and use your and your incorrectly, but I can't visualize that properly. But thanks for hanging out with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was a great conversation.
Okay, reflections from that conversation. So, yeah, it's so funny. I was scared to talk to Patty because I think I'm a pretty decent writer. I think I'm a pretty good writer. I'm not a fantastic or phenomenal writer, but I think I'm pretty good. And oh no, I have another aside within an aside. A dweem within a dweem. Marriage. Sorry. Okay. Come on, Princess Bride, anyone? Oh, one of the other things that I think would have made my day, even had I not sold a book at that event, and I'm going back to the event in Burlington Book Expo I talked about, was I had a woman and her daughter come up, and they were looking at my True Ghost Story books, and they're like, "Okay, I have this one. Oh, you have that one? Yeah, I got that one." It's like, "Oh, I don't have that one," and you know, it doesn't happen very often that you meet a fan that is trying to collect all your books. It's such an overwhelmingly positive experience that would have made my entire day, even had I not sold a single book even to them. Just knowing that made my day. Now, I did sell a book to them and I sold books to other people, but it was a reminder to me why I invest so much time in doing these events, because that's the connection. There is something about my books that someone likes. Obviously, they like the True Ghost Stories as well. I think they actually, she bought my horror story collection, One Hand Screaming, which was interesting because she'd normally mostly enjoyed True Ghost Stories, but she wanted to check out some other stuff that I'd written because she enjoyed the way I wrote. And I was like, that's cool. And the reason I thought of that aside was because I was saying, I'm not a great writer, but I do have fans. That's what I was going to say. But there are some people who actually, all 5 people who've read my books love them. But anyways, I'm not a great writer. But back to the original topic again. I get scared when we talk about grammar. I feel like I'm going to be judged because I feel like I don't really know the terms and how to use things. But Patty was such a gracious guest. She did not make me feel like an idiot. And I love the way she approaches grammar in that way. She says that it isn't rules, it's art. It isn't rules, it's style. I love that so much. And then she mentions the gatekeeping of things like identifying the parts of speech. Like that's gatekeeping. And how many people like me are fearful of it because I was always afraid of being wrong. And yet, so here's the thing is, I think I still can't identify participles and all the stuff in grammar. So I still get a little bit overwhelmed and intimidated by it. But I think there's this understanding that comes from hours and hours and hours and hours and months and years and decades of reading, plus hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and weeks and months and years and decades of writing, where even if you can't identify those things, you know what works. You know what sounds good and you know what doesn't because of that exposure to it. It's kind of like when Steve and I were on our way to Halifax and going through Quebec and New Brunswick, which is the most bilingual province in Canada. The access to hearing people speaking French and attempting to actually practice speaking French, it's the exposure to it that made me start to feel more confident. If I was able to do it for, the last time when I spent a week in Montreal in a part of Montreal where I was only hearing French for a week. By the end of the week, I was starting to be able to have conversations with people in French. So anyways, you can still understand something without understanding it, but Patty makes it more approachable and more digestible, and I love that she's doing that. And I like that she reminded us that copy editors are there for helping with clarity and connection, and that's what grammar's about, is clarity and connection, rather than taking away our voice. And I think the best editors I've worked with, the ones I've loved the experience with the most, are the editors who help me with the clarity. And they say, well, when you said this could be taken two ways. Or maybe you should try removing this word or using a different thing here because it's confusing the reader. And again, that's been a great experience because this is the editor helping me understand what I can do to make this better. I have had editors who've wanted to just be writers and wanted to rewrite my stuff because it'll sound better in their voice. And they may be good writers, but for me, they're horrible editors because I don't want their voice. I want my voice. My voice! The last thing I want to reflect on was Patty's adapting something that a student said. So she calls herself a traveling teacher instead of a literary consultant. And so there's two things about that I want to reflect on. One is it's just genius marketing because it creates a much friendlier tag or title. Like literary consultant sounds boring and stale. Traveling teacher sounds fun and mysterious and entertaining. But it's also, and this is the other thing, very important for us to reflect on when we think about Patty doing that. This is such a critical element of listening to your audience. How do they see you? How do they see the things you're creating? Listen to what they said. She overheard a student, or a student referred to her as the traveling teacher. This is how the kids saw her. She adapted She's still doing the same thing, but she adapted the way she refers to herself in this friendlier manner, because when people hear that, they get that from the point of view of that audience member. Think about that with your own writing. Think about how you would see yourself as the audience member. Listen. Yeah, okay, reviews and stuff like that. And I do look at reviews, and I look at the critical ones, I look at the positive ones, and in the critical ones, I'm looking for listening to the audience. And I have actually adapted my writing, when I've seen something in a review, and I went, oh, wow, you know what? Thanks for pointing that out. You're right. I can fix that. I'll fix it in the next thing I write, or it's something I can fix if I go back on a self-published piece. But anyways, what a fantastic conversation with Patty. I learned not to be terrified of grammar and love that. So if you want, check it out. You can find her at pattymcgee.org, or of course, you can check out her fun book, which I love the title for as well, Not Your Granny's Grammar. I got a little bit of alliteration there, which I also love. You know what else I love? I love you. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And a huge shout out and thank you to those who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. Thank you guys so much for your support, as well as my coffee buddies at buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie. Oh, you know what? Speaking of patrons, I actually have a new patron that I would like to welcome to the fold. So I have a new patron who recently joined the awesome patrons who support this podcast. Welcome, David Perlmutter. So thanks, David, for becoming a patron and joining the other awesome folks, the small, the powerful, the mighty, who support this podcast at patreon.com. David, do let me know if you're having trouble accessing the additional audio content or any of the content over at Patreon. Also, a shout out to those who support me over at Substack. Very similar. It's part of the Stark Reflections brand. And I'm trying to do a bit more crossover between them all so that people can get the reflections in various formats, like people who enjoy reading, people who enjoy listening, etc. I do want to continue to be here for you to reflect on the good, the bad, and the ugly of the publishing scene with a bit more positivity, probably, as I like to stick to that positivity. But thank you so much for listening. I love your comments, no matter how they come in. It's a reminder that we're all reflecting, we're all learning, and we're all growing as a big, giant community of people who want those human connections. I appreciate your human connection in listening to this. So until next week, and until next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.